Okay, welcome everyone to this General Purpose Committee meeting. And I am going to start by taking the apologies. I have received apology from Jess Murray and Vicky Fiedler. She may be late, but at the moment we've got apology. Any other apology? No? Okay. Urgent matters, I haven't received any, so we'll skip that. Matters to be considered in private, I haven't received any. Any declaration of interest? I've got my ward, one of the items, so I don't know if you want to take that as a matter of interest or. Okay.
Sometimes obsessive interest.
Okay. Okay. Well, anyway, I've declared. Minutes of the previous meeting. Now, obviously, that meeting was held on the 6th of December 22, and most of the members are still here. I wasn't in the meeting, so if you can confirm, I can sign them off as a true record. Thank you. Now, the next item is the Food and Workplace Safety Service plans. And I think I'll leave it to you to tell why it's late and what we are doing. Joe.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I'm Joe Blanchard. I'm Head of Environmental Health and Trading Standards. And with me this evening is Isabella Gregory, who's Regulatory Operations Manager. We have oversight of food and safety teams. The reason why we're here this evening is seeking your approval for the food service plan for the financial year 2023 to 24 and the health and safety service plan for 23 to 24. Those plans are in Appendix 1 and 2. In Appendix 3, we've also got a performance report for the previous year's activities. So just by way of a short background, these are annual service plans, which every local authority is obliged to adopt under the Food Safety Act 1990 and the Health and Safety at Work, etc. Act 1974. And basically, each service plan outlines how the council is going to discharge its statutory duties under each of those acts. Normally, we would bring these plans before the committee around June for approval so that the approach can be approved for what we're going to do for the rest of the financial year. However, because the committee's not met, we've not had an opportunity to bring it before you. So actually, these service plans, they're written in a way that talks about our anticipated activities from the 1st of April 2023 to the 31st of March 2024. And we're already 10 months through that. So it is a bit of a kind of academic exercise, but we are obliged to seek members' approval for those service plans. What I'll expect is later on this year, probably around June, we will bring the new service plans for the coming financial year and report on the activities for this financial year. So for that reason, I don't really propose to go into detail into the service plans or the report, but I'm happy to field any questions.
Obviously, this report was this report was supposed to be presented around June time, so we are already late. So we basically need to approve this because if most of the work has been done. So do you have any questions?
Can I just ask, are this year's inspections on plan?
Yes, they are generally on plan. We've actually in the food service plan, we expected to have end the financial year with around a 200 inspection shortfall. We're hoping to end the year with a 0 shortfall in inspections. That's mainly been through some successful internal growth bids. We've had to expand the resourcing for the team. But yeah, there isn't any major issues with delivery of the plan. What we will do in June annually with each service plan looks back on the previous financial year, says this is what we delivered, and then each service plan then goes on. The substantive bit is really how we're going to deliver the coming financial year. But yeah, we're on track. We're beyond on track, which is good.
Thank you. Any, yes, Yol, and then Miriam. Yol?
Thank you, Chair. I was at the GPC meeting last time when you did the full presentation, and struck by two things. One, the really good work that's taking place, but the key problem was staffing and recruitment and retention. I know it's a bit in the report, but where are we with that compared to, say, 18 months ago? Joe's smiling, so I think we can guess the answer. Okay.
So yes, staffing remains a challenge. The resourcing, which I mentioned, has really enabled us to use agency staff, contractors to do so. That's for various reasons, mainly because the market doesn't have the kind of capacity to deliver what we need. I mean, for example, one of the agency contractors used to work for us 3 or 4 years ago in Isabella's role, and we've just managed to keep the kind of emotional clause in them to keep them coming back to assist us. So it's agency staff, but we are you may have noticed my job title has changed, where we've had a senior management restructuring in housing and environment. We're expecting that reorganization to go through to the teams, etc. So Isabella's actually just successfully been recruited into a role that's going to change slightly into food safety and licensing manager, to have a bit more of a focus on delivery of those areas. And then we of course always would prefer to recruit permanent staff that we can not only develop, but we can retain for longer and give them a career path that makes them stick with us. So that reorganization will be occurring through the financial year. But yes, that's a challenge for every local authority, and we're meeting it with agency staff, but that is quite short-sighted, and I think we recognise the issues with that.
Yeah, Miriam?
Thank you, Chair. If I can just ask a couple of questions. I mean, obviously in the news there's an awful lot about the EU and the changes in the tariffs that are going on. I'm just wondering what's really happening with that. I can imagine that's probably creating a bit of a workload actually preparing for that. So I know it's something that we've probably touched on before, but now things really are happening. And also just on another point, when I'm talking about health and safety, I know that we'd have responsibilities under certain organisations or companies or whatever within the borough that we'd have to deal with health and safety, but there are instances such as leisure organisations which have to self-report to the HSE. Now, if organisation, if they don't report themselves, if there is a problem, if there is an accident or whatever, I mean, do we have any powers within the council in order to actually put our foot down and make them meet their responsibilities? Thank you.
Yes, so the Brexit checks and all of that is probably the best way I can summarise it. So Ealing is a really unique proposition in terms of its food industry and its demographics. You know, we've got a significant sector, which is your standard retail selling to consumers, but we've also got a really large and wide-ranging sector which deals with food manufacturing, and import and export controls is something that our officers get involved with. So yeah, I mean, Brexit continues to, the outcomes of, let me say this very carefully, it continues to cause challenges for businesses, and when businesses are challenged, that causes issues for compliance, and that inevitably leads on to a more significant burden for the officers whose role is to deal with compliance. But yeah, we see, so we will give something, for example, a line of work we do is export health certificates. So we will certificate with regards to the nature and standards of products. Now we're a third country, as in outside of the EU, requirements upon businesses to have export health certificates to accompany consignments are increased. So It's a cost recovery piece of work that we do, but like a lot of things, we never truly recover the cost of that. But it's another burden. It's another reason why we need to expand the size of the service, and so does many other people, which leads on to the issues with recruitment. So yes, any disruption of the industry creates work for us. So I think I may have answered that question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Perfect. So
Yes,
I think there
Councillor
was-
Ball? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, so if I answer your question in regards to health and safety, so obviously you inquired whether we can do anything to do with HSE, Health and Safety Executive Enforcement Premises. Unfortunately, the answer is no. However, as it happens very often, we would get urgent concerns coming to us from the members of the public, and occasionally we would just go out from a moral perspective to make sure that things are done safely. We have very close links with the HSE, and if things are quite urgent, then I would pick up a phone call and just call them. But unfortunately, we don't have any inspection or enforcement powers at those premises.
And I'll just add, you mentioned about sort of incident reporting, that there are requirements for employers to report certain incidences, dangerous occurrences, etc. And if they fail to report that, then that's an offence. That's something that we would investigate. And we have had cases where that is, you know, one of the offences that we are investigating, a failure to report. Of course, we rely on being notified of that incident occurring in the first place. We do have a small, and this is detailed in the service plan, a small amount of proactive campaigns where we go out to sectors that we've identified as particularly high risk, but generally we rely on a kind of reactive service, a response to complaints for that kind of thing. But we will investigate it, and yeah, we've had a few different levels of enforcement action, ultimately prosecution.
Councillor Ball?
Lower risk inspections. Is that something you're aware of? And if so, do you see pitfalls with it, or do you think that could potentially be very helpful for your staffing issues?
We might share this because there's a technical aspect to this in terms of the competency frameworks that the FSA set up. But there is, I always give the example of, you know, I'm often asked, is there a way we could do this in a more streamlined fashion? You know, we have a number of different services that are out and about. So maybe could one of our civil enforcement officers who's dealing with littering fines also pop into a food business? And I always want to say, I've brought some food this evening. Here's one by a qualified food inspector, premises that's produced by a premises that's been inspected by a qualified food inspector, and here's one by someone that isn't. Which would you choose? I mean, going back to just the industry in Ealing, the food demographics, you know, we aren't, how can I name another borough without being mean? I can't really, but we aren't a rural backwater where there's just a few retail shops. We have really high level, complex, industrial scale food businesses here. You know, we've got food businesses that run 24-hour shifts. We've got with Deliveroo and the other online platforms, we've got what's known as dark kitchens. We've got people that rent kitchens for a couple of hours and then they're off. So the level of not just complexity, but also the kind of robustness you need for someone that can investigate premises, we would generally not support a kind of diluting of the requirements. That's not to say, however, we talked about how the recruitment challenges, we will take kind of entry level staff. We did this to good effect during COVID. We took freshly graduated people and you know, gave them the practical skills which they can develop very quickly here, because we have probably nearly everything you could consider in the food regulation. We have that in the borough, other than shellfish purification, which you need to go to kind of North Norfolk for, but we have nearly everything here. So you know, we train people up here very quickly, so we do have a route. So I'm not saying I would disregard people without experience, but you need to be very careful before you do things like that. Did you want to say anything just on the competency framework?
I think you've covered it. The only thing I would say is the FSA saw that views last year when they were thinking about making changes. And they've announced last year that they weren't going to go with those changes. They were looking at different ways of amending the Food Law Code of Practice to allow for flexibility. Because I think it's safe to say that probably every single local authority, but for a few, struggle with delivering all of the food inspections.
Okay, any other question? If not, in the last century, I used to own a food business, and in Ealing, we held a workshop, kind of conference type of thing, where the businesses were invited, food businesses, and they were trained. Now that you are short on the resources as well, and the food hygiene standards have declined, is that something you would be considering, which could be sponsored by the food businesses and have a type of workshop to advise businesses on food safety? Yeah.
So one of the things you might have noted in the report is that we were successful to secure some funding for food advisors by the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, and very much what you described, that's what we aim to do. So the advisors, they're already out there, they're providing free advice to all of the food businesses that wish to do so, and they've been proactively reaching out to all of the non-compliant businesses. And they're seeing about a 70% success rate with businesses that were non-compliant, received their free intervention from us, and now are compliant. And one of the things that we want to deliver this year is a free workshop, either in person or online, where anyone that has any questions can come to. So we're already doing it, if that helps.
Oh, sorry. The next item on the agenda is polling places change proposals and the Elections Act 2022. I'm planning to go through those as a block, but I'll ask Helen to introduce the report, and then we can go through and if there's any questions.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd just like to challenge the interest of this report. Personally, I eat out, pretty regularly, maybe a couple of times a month, but we don't have, praise the Lord, we don't have two or more elections a month. So it must be that time of that season again. We have elections on the way, which means that your ever vigilant in-house elections team has been reviewing all of the boroughs. How many total polling stations?
137.
137 polling stations, to check that they're all still there. They're all still, the people who own them are all still willing to rent them to us, and that they all still meet health and safety and other requirements. the answer is that actually no, they're not all still there. They're not all still available, and they don't all meet current health and safety standards. In from left field this year, we have the Elections Act 2022, which has brought new challenges for our already very busy team. Examples, it's a pretty full report, so I'm not going to simply repeat it, but examples of the sort of new requirements that that the polling staff are going to have to deal with. We now have to make provision with the biggest change, of course, is voter ID. And there are some we have to make provision for private facilities for some voters to have their faces matched to the photo ID. For most of us, that's fairly straightforward. But if you wear a face covering, then we have to be respectful of culture. So it's a long way of saying we have to have room in our polling stations for that sort of thing. We also can reasonably anticipate that a number of the checks, which are many of them are explained in the report, and many others I'm sure you're aware of yourself. Those the new procedures will take longer, and it doesn't have to be very much longer per voter for queues to develop, and sun doesn't always shine on polling day. Even when it does, sometimes it can be a bit hotter. You don't want to be standing out in it all the time. Either way, we need to allow for people spending longer and the potential for queues. So we're looking at more closely at the size of the polling places that we provide, and other things as well, but it's all made for more things to think about when the team have been out reviewing the existing polling places that we have. So I've categorized the 10 proposals we have. I think I'd break them down into 3 groups, probably in reverse order. Paragraph 2.12 of the report, we have one polling station that was temporarily moved to a different fixed point, but now that Copley Close Community Centre is rebuilt better and than ever, the proposal is to return it to its permanent home. 2.11 of the report are we have 5 fixed polling places that are unavailable for the usual range of reasons. So simply physically not there, or being refurbished, or whatever. Or not available for us, not willing to rent the building as it is to us. So we've made proposals for those changes. And then last but not least, the perennial favourite of this committee and its predecessor, the Boundaries Panel, namely the so-called temporary huts, also known as porter cabins, also known as polling places that are very, very demanding of time and resource, and challenging even to get polling station workers to agree to go and sit in them for 15 hours on polling day. And the longer standing committee members will recall that this is not new. We come to you regularly making proposals for change. the fact is that there is provision in the legislation for use of this sort of temporary polling station, but it's supposed to be emergency use only, when the sort of scenario you might envisage is if a polling station is flooded the day before polling day, or where there really isn't any other option at all. And for many of our existing temporary polling places, that's not the case. And so, given the background of needing bigger spaces, health and safety concerns, I think last time, practical concerns, I think it might have been the last election, I can't remember, there was one on, I think, Greenford Avenue, where the contractor popped it down on the pavement and burst a water main. Yeah, these sort of things do happen. They will happen in relation to these sort of things. We should not and really must do our utmost to reduce their use. So we've got a number of proposals there. On temporary polling stations generally, and in the light of what I've said, we have all of our temporary polling stations are not being put forward for change today, but it's my firm view and of my officer team that really we need to be moving on from these arrangements. And so we will be doing an even more full review from starting following the parliamentary elections, which will take place sometime between now and the end of January 2025. So where the recommendation, Chair, is that in relation to those temporary polling place proposed changes, that they are temporarily changed only to the fixed stations we're suggesting. Those temporary changes holding in place until the end of January 2025, but which by my calculation should take us the other side of the parliamentary elections, following which the team will do an even more comprehensive review. And with that in mind, Chair, a plea from us to you, the local experts, please do help us to identify suitable fixed alternatives. I'm aware that we keep coming back and that we keep getting pushback, but it can't continue for us to continue to use these. So we're looking for your help as well in the future, not right now. Last but not least, Chair, just explaining recommendation 3. That is again picking up in relation to these temporary huts, particularly bearing in mind the new requirements and continuing challenges. It's easy to anticipate that it may not prove possible to resource and place one or more of our temporary polling places. So I'm asking, Chair, that you authorise me, following consultation with you, to make alternative arrangements should that be the case. And I'll be quiet now, Chair, and I'm happy to take questions. And obviously I have Ross Jackson, Head of Elections, and Mark Howlett, Electoral Services Officer, who are the subject matter experts and who have surveyed and know the full details of these sites. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, before we go through those polling stations, do you have any questions? And Anthony Jan?
The review that you're taking, will it consider a change in polling districts? I noticed looking at the list that some attendances at polling stations are as low as just over 100 and the highest is over 800. And there's quite a variation between the lowest attended and the highest attended. And there may be time to redraw our polling districts so that we don't need so many polling stations, especially with the increase in postal votes.
Chair,
Yes.
we're not ruling anything in or out at the moment. I mean, certainly I think for some of these temporary polling places, given the amount of times that we have looked at this and looked at it again, and the challenges of finding alternatives within or very close to those areas, it would make sense to keep an open mind, but I don't think that we're going to we can commit at this stage to definitely doing a comprehensive borough-wide review of.
But if you're looking at a temporary polling place, so if you're looking at a temporary polling place and there isn't another one in the polling district, the logical thing to do is look at changing the polling district, especially with such disparity in numbers, 800 at some, 100.
I agree, Chair, and we will bring back proposals with that helpful suggestion taken on.
Thank you. Any other question? No, I don't see any other question. Now, obviously, you've divided it well, Helen, into 3 blocks. One is Copley Close 1, which is coming back. There are 5 polling stations which are not available, and there are 4 that are temporary porta cabins. Now, obviously, not as a chair, but I'm a ward councillor as well. So as a ward councillor, after consultation with my other colleagues, I've got a alternative proposal. Now, the polling station that we are discussing, moving from one end to the other, because those 2 polling stations are at the end of each district. Lee Road, Empire Road is on the one end of the district, and the St. Nicola is on the other end of the other district. So it's quite distant. And moving the JQ, which is the Empire Road polling station that is on the end of the district, to the other district would have been possible. But since the implementation of the school street scheme, St. Nicola Church has become a kind of no-go area for the residents, especially when the car owners were bombarded with penalty charges. Residents have stopped going that way, and they feel that they have been really restricted to go to that area. To travel to St. Nicola Church, now you have to go through industrial area, and industrial area has no, and there's no access through Federal Road, and it has practically become, the industrial area has practically become a kind of one-way street, because the lorries or the businesses cannot go onto Federal Road if they are traveling on Wordsworth Road. So if there is a lorry making 3-point turn, then there's a huge congestion and the queues start building, and the residents are not really keen to travel that way. There was a mention of last mayoral elections, temporary arrangements. Those were obviously very different circumstances, and school street scheme was at very initial trial stages, and residents were still not sure about it. Also, people were happy to take the opportunity to come out and travel, walk, as they were coming out of the lockdowns. So they were happy to be given opportunity at least to go out for whatever reason. But now, after the lived experience, residents do not go to that area very often. I believe that by removing this polling station, we will be disenfranchising a good part of voters, especially the disabled, elderly, and mothers with children, who are otherwise happy to go on to a short walk and cast their vote. So I would be proposing to keep this polling station until we find some better solution, which can be Terryville Primary School in future, but we will be looking into that. So this is what I would be asking the members, that if we can agree this proposal, that we keep the Perryville Ward 1. If we keep that, then we can approve the others. Yes, Miriam.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I was looking at this and do agree with what you're saying, that they are very far apart from each other, the existing polling place and the proposed polling place. I mean, one thing I was inspired by was looking at Hanger Hill Ward. Even though there's going to be a new polling station at the Fox and Goose Hotel, which is across a very big main road, and which may deter some people going across there. I thought that's actually a very good venue. It's actually where my wedding reception was. So I know it's a good, attractive venue. So I think it'd be a good place to go. So thinking about that, I was looking at Perry Vale, and if I'd had the chance before the meeting, I would have actually liked to have gone along Bilton Road to see if there was maybe a business along there that could potentially be approached to operate in the same way that the Fox and Goose is helping us out. So I don't know if there is if there is a reason why we can't have the temporary polling station. If we are going to do a temporary thing for this time round, it would be better to actually look at a local business, and presumably there must be somewhere along there. Even maybe the post office could see something. I don't know, but something could be put together. Thank you.
Yeah, that's what we will be looking in future. And when I spoke to Helen, I said we will be looking for something, but obviously it's too short now. Yes, Councillor Ball.
Yeah, I just wanted to support the proposed Hanger Hill change, and it seemed a good time as Councillor Rice mentioned it. So. Yeah, in addition to it being Councillor Rice's wedding venue, I mean, it's very suitable. It also is, while it is in a different part of the ward, it's closer to the new student housing, which students often have a poor turnout. So actually having a polling station that's at their end of the polling district is probably helpful for turnout overall. So yeah, I think it's a positive change, and I mean, I'd be happy for it to be a permanent change, but I see they're all the changes from temporary polling stations are recommended as temporary, but I don't know. I certainly, speaking to Councillor Zissimos and I, we'd be happy to have that as a permanent one.
Yes.
Yeah, we would. It's a decision for the committee, but all of the three, as it seems like, former temporary polling stations. Officers would certainly support a permanent change if you felt comfortable with that, noting that we will be reviewing the other temporary poll, but if you're happy for these to simply be ticking the box and that's that, that would be
Yeah,
Don't we normally trial them for one election to see whether there are any unforeseen problems?
Chair, just to be clear, we typically make permanent changes, but councillors are not known for keeping their opinion to themselves on these things. So we are usually made aware when there are challenges, and we would and we would pick those up in a future review. But it would certainly make things administratively easier if you felt able to make those changes permanent, and noting that officers will most definitely welcome feedback on these and other polling stations, because things change for even for the other fixed stations, the other 121 stations. So it's important that we keep everything under review. And that's why we really, welcome ward councillors as our eyes and ears out there to feed back to the team with your ideas and experiences.
Okay, that's noted. We'll come to that. Yes, Ian?
Yeah, just don't want to pick on the Fox and Goose as a particularly, but although it is a name hotel, it is basically a pub. And I'm thinking, would that disenfranchise any customers that would from various religious groups? Would that put people off?
Yes, Mark, you want to say?
Sorry, yeah,
Or
no,
lost.
no, we do take that into effect in our recommendations. So we have had areas in the past where pubs have been available and clubs, and this has caused an issue because the bar is in view and shutters and things. But this one is absolutely 100% away from the bar, so it's a function room to the left of where the bar area is. So there is no alcohol in view. Can't smell it, can't see it. So I think it's a good point. But in this case, for this particular venue, it is separate from where the bar is, for where the alcohol's being served and where the people are drinking it.
Right, okay. Yes.
Separate entrance, sorry, as well.
Okay. Yes, Kim?
I just wanted to echo your proposal. I mean, if you feel strongly that residents would be disenfranchised by this change, then I think we should seriously consider keeping the polling station as proposed.
Thank you. Any other question? If there's no question, then are we happy to approve the way I suggested, that we keep Perryville and we are okay to agree the temporary arrangements, but with the Hanger Hill, as I can see. Yes, Helen?
Sorry, I thought I meant after you, I was going to comment after you finish, just to clarify whether you are making the porter cabin changes permanent or temporary, which is
So first of all, let me get to that. Are we happy to keep Perryville polling station?
Well, I'm concerned about the problems which identified in the report. It's a large polling district, and the temporary polling station doesn't have the capacity for the existing usage.
Well, from my personal experience, that polling station is suitable for the number of residents that we have in that district. I have experience of 3 elections, personal elections, and to me, it's been working fine. I didn't see any problem. And as I said, the alternative is not really workable, and it will definitely be causing problem for those who will not be traveling. So
I'm not sure whether I agree with you. The great amount of difficulty it's going to produce. I would suggest that we go ahead with the temporary change to give us a chance to see how it works for one election, see whether the difficulties you foresee do in fact arise or not.
okay. Who is supporting my proposal? Okay, who is against? Any abstention? Oh, you're not getting that. Okay, then my proposal is accepted. Thank you for that. Now we are coming to the other 3 polling stations. Are we going to make them permanent? I did have consultation from ward councillor who was happy for the temporary arrangements for Central Greenford, who had concerns, and I said, because we are making temporary, you will always have a review. So that is where I'm a bit stuck, because I had said that we are doing temporary changes. So, but I'm happy to go for the other 2 to make permanent changes if that helps. The members, what are you okay to make temporary permanent changes for Hanger Hill and Greenford Broadway, and temporary change for Central Greenford? Sorry, all 3. I think we will. I mean, that's what my proposal is, that we keep Central Greenford temporary, and then when there's a review, then we can make the decision.
What was the objection?
For the Central Greenford? Yeah, the ward I have personally not visited, actually, unfortunately. I wasn't available to visit, but the ward councillor was looking for a polling station on the same side where it is now.
But we've already had the trial in the 2021 election. Now, admittedly, it was the one with low turnouts and post-COVID, but it's been used, been okay.
Okay.
It seems a bit curious to delay to have another trial.
It's up to the member.
I would go with the officer recommendation.
Okay. If that's the case, then are we happy to approve them as a permanent changes? Yeah. Okay, all 3 are Hanger Hill, Central Greenford, and Greenford Broadway are approved as permanent changes. Now we move on to the next block, which is the polling stations are not available. Are we happy to go for recommendations? Any questions? No? And the final one is the Copley Close one. Obviously, that is that okay? Yeah. So we are happy with all those arrangements. Yeah. Agreed? Thank you. So that covers the polling stations. Do we need to go on to the Elections Act 22? Anything you want to say on that?
Yeah, I've enclosed a paper. It's quite detailed, but I thought while we're here, it'd be helpful if anybody's got any questions on the Elections Act. I can run through the main points. I think if that would be helpful, and then take any questions.
I think that would be helpful if you can run to the main ones.
Onto the main ones. Yeah, let's go for that. So, voter ID is probably the first to go off. And that came into force last May. So it's already been trialed, as it were, because elections did happen outside of London. And effectively, in-person voters must show, and they will in May from now for Ealing, they must show approved ID when they go into a polling station. So this is just the in-person voters, not postal voters, just the in-person voters. And there's quite a lengthy list of what ID they can show, but from the studies we've done, it's mainly driving licenses, passports, blue badge, and older persons' bus passes. That seems to be 98% of what people are showing in the station. But there is a longer list. There's Northern Ireland cards and army cards and things like that. So there is a long list. That information will be on the polling card. We have already done significant comms in terms of we've written to every single in-person elector in Ealing, and we've explained this is what's happening and this is what they need to do. And if they do not have that ID, then they can apply to us for what's called a voter authority certificate. They can do it online, or they can do it off our website by downloading an application. Now, we've had to this point only around about 100 of those. So we know there's quite a few more out there that may require that, and they will probably come at us near the election. But as it stands, we've written to everybody, we've done comms, we've done social media. We had an article in Around Ealing for the autumn edition. We've got more comms planned for the spring edition, lots of social media, posters around the borough, and in conjunction with the Electoral Commission and the GLA, we'll be doing all kinds of leafleting, different posters, different styles of comms to get this message across, which will be from about March. So on the telly, there'll be lots of adverts from the Electoral Commission. You'll see on the buses in London, there will be messages on the buses from the GLA, not from the mayor, from the GLA. And we'll be doing our own stuff to complement that, alongside, of course, with Hillingdon, because for these elections, it's the Ealing and Hillingdon constituency for which Ealing is responsible. We are the lead borough for this election. So obviously what Hillingdon do is of interest to us as well, and they will be doing more or less the same thing that we're doing. On top of that, we've already identified groups that are less likely to have this stuff or less likely to know that they're going to need voter ID. And so as part of our outreach plans, we've got an officer who is visiting residential homes, hostels, younger people's accommodation to remind people that they'll need the ID. So any questions on voter ID?
Yeah, Councillor Young.
Can young people use their identification, age identification documentation they use for getting drinks in bars?
If it's got the pass, there's a pass logo. If that is on, it's a pass card, so it's a logo. It'll need to be a specific. I don't think it's their uni library card, but if it's their proper student card that's got a pass logo on it, PASS, then they will be able to use that.
And I mentioned it to my children, they said we have to carry identification to get into a bar anyway. So when that do, and I didn't know the.
Yes, so if it's got a pass code on it, PASS, then that's allowed. But as I say, from the evidence we've got outside of London, and obviously London is a very different beast to the rest of the UK. 98% of people were turning up with either passport, driving license, blue badge, or older person's bus card. So they were the main forms of identification.
I worked on 2 elections outside London, just
yeah. So it will be the right. They will have the odd things that you've just said that they will have from the evidence that we've got. So some people will turn up with army cards. If it's the student card with a pass logo, then that's accepted. It's quite a long list. I could reel them all off, but there's about yeah. So yeah, if it's got a pass hologram on it, then they can accept that. I think the other thing with ID as well, it doesn't have to be in date, so it can be old ID as long as the picture looks the same as the person.
It can be an expired passport.
Correct.
Councillor Kingston?
Yeah, although this has been what's happened elsewhere, it's going to be the first general election. But presumably, it does take longer to process people when they go to vote. I'm just sort of thinking, it was impacting in 2010, where all sorts of things happened about people turning up late, and when there's like a guillotine of, will we be putting something in place to say that if you're in such and such place by 10 o'clock, you can vote, or if you're
So if that happens, yeah, we've got to. What effectively will happen is one of the poll clerks will don a high vis vest and they'll stand at the back of the queue at 10 o'clock. So that way they'll know nobody jumps the queue and they can be polite to people who have turned up late. So then we'll sort that queue out. We do, unfortunately, certainly at the temporary polling stations, which we've gone through, and some of the smaller stations that we've got a higher electorate, we will have queues. There is no doubt about it. At peak periods, there will be queues, but we'll do our best. We'll put as many staff as we can fit in these places, and we'll get people through. I think for the GLA, now clearly we still may have a general election on the 2nd of May with the GLA, and obviously we're still planning for that. We won't know that scenario until the 26th of March, because that's the last date for the Prime Minister to dissolve Parliament, to have it on the 2nd of May. So that would certainly have an impact for 2nd of May. But even as it stands with the GLA, there are 3 ballot papers. Now they've changed the rules. It used to be first and second preference on the mayoral paper. It's now first past the post. So that should speed things up. But still, they're going to have to show voter ID. They're going to have to complete 3 ballot papers, put them in the right box, and all the queries that are around that. We've also got, which I'll just jump straight to now, part of the postal voting rules have changed in terms of handing in postal packs. So from May, somebody comes in with a postal pack into a polling station, of which we had 7,000 at the last GLA election, 7,000 handed in at stations. Unfortunately, they're going to have to complete an A3 form that has a series of questions on that form. Is it your postal vote? Yes, no. Where have you come from? Give you a name, address, and they're going to have to sign this A3 form as part of the Elections Act, as part of fraud prevention, etc. That is going to tie our staff up as well, if you can imagine. So we've been in the office. It's going to take a minute for somebody to fill out, and then of course you've got people whose first language may not be English. You've got people that have needs, so that's also going to be
no room in the temporary polling station,
of course. But yeah, so it's it's going to be difficult at those temporary stations, and there's going to be queues. But I think we will do our best to
that form is only when they hand in the polling station.
Correct.
Not when they're posting.
No. So somebody gets their postal vote, they post it back in the post. Most people do that. 80% of people will post it Royal Mail, but a lot of people hold on to them. A lot of people think they're helpful by going to the polling station to hand them in. This will be new. They won't be expecting that. And so the staff cannot physically take the pack unless the form has been completed and signed. Now, if somebody comes into the station and chucks it on the desk, which will happen, that postal vote will go in a separate packet and it will be rejected. It won't even be opened. I think the other element is important as well that ties into this. Electors will also not be able to post postal packs through council letterboxes like they've done in the past, or hand it to reception staff at Personal House or wherever. It must be handed back to the returning officer and his staff, which would be Greenford Hall. Even when they hand it to us prior to polling day, they still have to complete this form. So the message is to the public as best we can, which we put on the packs anyway, is as soon as you get this, please post it.
Yeah, Councillor Nagpal first and then Councillor Gordon.
Do you know what the deadline is for the postal vote to be posted back in order to be counted, and so they don't have to bring it to the polling station?
Yeah, so it's 10 o'clock on polling night. So whichever way we've got it back, whether we've got it back through Royal Mail, who we give a lot of money to actually to do a final sweep on polling day. They actually go around every single letterbox and they collect everything about 6 o'clock on polling day, check their sorting offices, and they give us a big bag of the things at 9:15 at night. Obviously, when it's been handed in at a polling station, the presiding officer has confirmed that it was handed in before 10 o'clock. And clearly, when they come into our offices, people by hand, they can still, our offices are open till 10 o'clock on polling day. They can hand them in by hand. But it's going to cause an issue. I mean, some people are going to think they're helpful and post them through letterboxes. Some people are going to go to polling stations and not want to complete this form or understand it because they've got to sign as well. And obviously, it's another pressure on my team at Greenford Hall because we get a hell of a lot handed in at Greenford Hall as well prior to polling day. Because again, people think they're being helpful. Save on the postage. I'll walk it down to the offices. So I think they'll accept, most people will accept filling the form out. I think they will, because it says on the form, this is for fraud prevention, make sure your votes, all fine and we know where it's come from. There'll be some that don't, but it's going to take time. And going back to the point in the polling station, this is going to take a lot of the time up of presiding officers and poll clerks, especially when there's queries, and that will create queues.
Councillor Gordon.
I'm staggered by what I've just heard, and I think it's appalling enough to bring in the photo ID, to bring in this other attempt to dissuade and disqualify the actor is nothing short of scandalous. What is the communication for the postal vote? Because we also are in a situation where the postal service is wholly unreliable. First class is meaningless. It may arrive, may not arrive. We cannot rely on the postal service, which is why I suspect so many people hand it in. It's not just being helpful, it's mistrust of the postal service. What is the, I know you've written letters about the general changes, but is there a further communication when you send out the postal votes to clarify basically the withdrawal of voters' rights?
So obviously resources limited. We can't claim that money back if we were to write to every single postal voter. We've got 75,000 of them. But on their postal poll card in advance of the election, so the notice of election for the GLA, for example, is I think it's the 16th of March, brain's gone. But on that day, they will receive their postal poll card, and on that poll card, it will state that this must be posted back or handed into our offices or handed in at a polling station where they'll be required to complete a form. But it's a very difficult thing to get across to somebody for them to then remember, oh, Bing, I can't hand that in at Perivale Library because they won't accept it. It's got to go in the post or it's got to go there. So fortunately, most people, the very vast majority do post them. It's just that they're not going to be disenfranchised if they fill the form out. It may be, it sounds, I agree with Councillor Gordon, but I think it may be a little like voter ID where we might be getting a little more concerned than we should be, because it looks like voter ID has gone okay. I thought it was going to be a lot worse, but we'll see. I think we will do our best to communicate, but it's a difficult message to get across. I think on the packs, we're limited to what we can put on them because it's all prescribed. But one idea is that we may put it on the return B envelope. So that's once they've completed their ballot papers and they've signed their statements and they put the papers in, on the bit that they seal to send back, we may put a message there to say, please post via Royal Mail immediately. But we don't want to put people off either. If we say to somebody, we won't accept this by hand unless you fill out a form, it could also have a counter effect, and people might think on the day, if they see it on the dresser or whatever, they might think, well, I won't hand that in now. So it's a difficult one.
Councillor Ball?
Yes, I'm rather shocked about this as well. I hadn't heard about it either. Yeah, I just another aspect of it. Would it be I mean, you may already have thought of this, but would it be an idea to have signage up at council buildings, like, well, Percival House mainly, but really whatever council buildings people have historically handed in ballot papers to, saying that they cannot return, postal voting packs here, and then also at Greenford Hall there need to be a slightly different sign saying you can't put it through the letterbox. They have to be into this process.
No, absolutely. So the final plans haven't been signed off yet. They've got to go to Tony, who's the constituency returning officer. But the plan is, bar sealing. I mean, it's on there as an option, sealing some letterboxes, so physically can't put it. At a very minimum, it will have a clear sign on there saying, "Do not. If you post your postal vote through this, it will not be counted." And obviously, we will keep a thorough record post-election of all the numbers, what we've had in, and we'll also, it's a requirement, we have to write to the elector, so they're not going to be very happy either. Are they? When we say we haven't even opened your postal vote because you didn't do this, and go on. So it's complex, but we'll undertake all best practice that we can. But unlike voter ID, where we've learned lessons from other places, this is new, and this is coming in for everybody on that day. And I think, just to add as well, on postal votes, on the packs, it is now a criminal offence, whereas we had local protocols in Ealing, we said don't handle postal packs. So this is you as councillors, any political representatives, any supporters, so anybody who's connected, campaigners, anything, they are not permitted to handle postal packs, full stop, unless it's your own or it's a close family member, and we're talking spouse, mother, father, grandfather, etc. So I will be sending an email out to all councillors. Obviously, I'm meeting with agents from next week from different parties, and I'll be making that very clear. I don't think that's something that's happened for a while in Ealing, but even if you'll get an example of a dear old lady lives at the top flat in 16 floors up, she can't get a pack back. Can you please take that back for me? Contact us in those scenarios and we'll sort something out, get somebody around there. It's not worth the risk of getting involved in anything with postal packs.
Councillor Kingston?
Yeah, and I was just thinking, if somebody does come along, say a week before the election, they're either to Percival House with their postal pack, or are council staff allowed to say, we can't take it, but there's a post box down the road. Can they go that far, or is that see?
No, absolutely. So we're going to practice. So we'll be sending. We already send emails. I think possibly too much information to contact centre staff. Now, obviously, libraries are key. But I'll work with Louisa McDonald, who takes that on, and we'll be. That's exactly what we'll be saying. We can't take it, but there's a post box around the corner. Put it in there. Yeah.
Councillor Rice?
Thank you, Chair. Just a silly question. When you say an A3 form, is A3 just like a technical name for the form, or do we actually mean A3 size paper?
Unfortunately, it's A3.
Okay,
because
that's
there
take a long time.
Yes, so there are about 8 or 9 questions on it,
Yeah.
and one of the questions asks for their name and address, and they've got to sign it. And of course, before people sign anything, what should they do? You should read the reverse as well. What are they signing for? So we think a minute in the office with somebody who's compass mentis and can fill these things out. So you probably maybe looking at an average of up to 2 minutes across the board, and we had 7,000 handed in 2021. So it just goes back to that's just at the polling station. So it goes back to the pressures that these teams are going to have, especially in the smaller stations where we can't get them through. So yeah, it's a GLA election. If we don't have the parliamentary on the same day, we're probably looking at Ealing's actually got the second highest turnout in 2021. So we're probably looking at about 49-50% turnout. Still a lot, but not as big, obviously, as the parliamentary one, 70 plus. So
Okay, probably the last question. What has changed with regard to the Europeans after Brexit?
okay, I was just I can answer that and just go back to postals. There's a few other things on the postals.
Yeah, sure.
Just to be
Maybe not needs.
Oh, maybe not. Well, it's just on applications very quickly. As part of the Elections Act, people now must provide their national insurance number on a postal vote application. So it makes it a little harder. And we then need to check that national insurance with the Department of Work and Pensions, make sure it's them. If it's not them, we need to verify their identity in other ways. So that's causing, but I think we're in a good place because we've got 75. We've kind of saturated the market, I think. But there will still be some to go on top of that. It's a little bit harder. I think what they've done on the other side to balance it out, people can apply online now for a postal vote. It's a little fiddly. Maybe not for youngsters, but they have to write on a white piece of paper their signature, take a copy with their phone, upload it onto the website, and they can apply that way. So they've made it a little easier in that respect. But obviously, the national insurance number, certainly in my experience, can be a blocker because people don't have that to hand. And that moment that we're going to fill it out, they'll think, right, I'll put it to one side, I'll do it later instead of get done. So that's on postal votes. I think one final thing I missed out on the postal votes is nobody can hand in more than 5 postal vote packs, even if they complete this form, plus their own. So if somebody comes into a station with more than 5 plus their own, the team can't accept them. They could only accept 5 plus their own. So we don't have too many occasions where people come in with more than 5. I think we looked at it, it was, no more than 20 from looking at previous. And nor should it be really, because unless it's a big family, why somebody would be doing that? But still, it's important to note that that's again a rule. So if somebody came in with 7, the presiding officer will be told, well, I can take 6 of those. If one of them's yours, sign here. Either go to Greenford Hall, post that other one, because we couldn't take it at Greenford Hall either because they've already handed in 6. So yeah. So EU, yeah. So EU, fortunately, doesn't come in for this election. So it comes in directly after the 2nd of May. So I think it's the bank holiday Monday, which is 6th, 7th, or 6th. That's when these rules come in. So where it'll affect the 2nd of May is, so if I start with the EU citizens, any EU citizens who were here prior to January the 1st, 2021 will retain their rights to still be on the electoral roll, firstly. The others that will retain their rights are the countries who have got reciprocal agreements with the UK, voting agreements. And they are currently, unless it's changed in the last couple of weeks, Luxembourg, Poland, Portugal, and Spain. So they're fine. Those countries are fine. They register as they do normally. The franchise doesn't change. Anybody that was here pre-2021, it doesn't change. But after 2021, they can only register if they have been given the European Settlement Scheme. So if they've signed up to that and been agreed, then they can register. Now, obviously for Ealing, we've got a huge amount of EU voters, 30,000, which is a lot, and it's growing rapidly. So we've got to carefully manage this. I'm being told by the Cabinet Office that there's going to be a way to just sail a lot of these people through because they've got the data. So we'll smash our data together. If they were here before 2021 or they've applied through the settlement scheme, we can match it. We don't even need to bother them. But there will be a section a chunk section whereby we're going to write to them because we'll have belief that they're no longer able to register. And that's the tricky area. So we will be working with comms. We'll be doing what we can to soften the blow and obviously to make sure that none of those get missed out. And of course, going forward for newbies, the same will apply. So you're going to have to construct some careful comms. Now, we do have, the good news for us is the implementation period ends in February 2025. So we've got a bit of time to do it, for it to be implemented. Where it may affect, so that's for voters, but obviously candidacy rights. So it's the same applies effectively. However, if you're already in post prior to that bank holiday Monday, then whatever post you're in, whether it's a councillor, whatever post you may hold, that will stay, even though the rules have changed. So I don't know, let's say I'm an Italian and I arrived after 2021. I don't have any settlement, but I'm a councillor and I'm currently a councillor. That you will stay a councillor for the term, so that you wouldn't get kicked out of being a councillor. So if that makes sense, so it would stay for the term. Because of everything else going on, we've got there's accessibility requirements, which I won't go into, and we've got the voter ID, we've got the postal vote thing, we've got also the looming general election, we've got the planning for the GLA, lots going on. That has been put on the back burner for the time being because it is happening after the election. So we will be going full steam ahead with that the week following the election. We won't be sending anything out prior to that because it doesn't come into effect until after, and people will get confused if we start communicating that in too much detail, I think.
Mr. Gordon, you want to come back?
A couple of things. So just on that, to be clear, so nothing for the mayoral GLA elections, no change.
Yeah.
Anything after that, there will be, but obviously it doesn't impact the general election because European EU voters can't vote anyway.
Correct.
But should there be a by-election or for the next set of council elections, the changes will come into force?
Correct.
Okay. The question I was going to ask is, all the changes are brought in for protection for electoral fraud. Might be a tricky question to ask. Is there any evidence in Ealing in recent elections of significant or even insignificant levels of electoral fraud?
Recently, no. The last incident we had of fraud was back in 2010, which we picked up. I think it was a financial fraud. It wasn't a voting fraud. But we picked it up. We didn't put them on. It was a registration fraud. But we've had no. I can't think of a single.
It was before I started. Well, I know
Yeah,
of that.
but since, yeah.
Yeah, I think the other point to make is that we are very proactive. And in Ealing, we actually have a counter fraud plan, and we have our audit team looking at things. So yeah, we're on it, and we've and hopefully people are aware that we are. So there other parts of the country might not have been quite as proactive as we've been.
Yeah, I think the levels of integrity we go going down to the if we have a studio flat and 3 people register it, we will investigate that. We've got markers if a postal vote is going to the same address more than once to avoid the farm issues. So we have all these measures and checks and balances, but obviously they've now brought in this from the Pickles review, all these additional safeguards. But it is going to, it certainly will make my team's life a lot more difficult. It's going to need a lot more resources, and of course, we still aim to deliver well-run elections. That's what we're here for. There will be lessons learned, I'm sure, but we'll do what we can. We will do what we can. But I think just to be prepared, we're very good at not having queues in Ealing. There's always going to be a queue at some stage, but we're very good at it. I think this time round, certainly, I'm not just saying this because we've asked to reduce them, but the temporary places in a few of the other smaller stations which have got a high footfall. Yeah.
Thank you. I don't have any other indication from members. And this was for noting, and I take it as member have noted. We have approved the other recommendations. So with that, I think we've come to the end. Is there anything else you wanted to? Yes, Helen?
Yeah, Chair, just finally, the recommendation number 3, I'm taking it that that's being approved as well. And just to final plea to reiterate, please, help us in our ongoing quest to get rid of, find alternative solutions for the porta cabins, because they really aren't suitable anymore. But as I said, we need your ideas and to help us find those solutions. Thank you.
And I think if you can just, if anybody has any, because there's overseas electors and things as well. If anybody has any, of course, you know where I am. Just give us a shout and I'll get back.
Thank you. I think we've come to the end of the meeting. So with that, there's a date of the next meeting, which will be on 13th of March, 2024. And I don't think we'll be discussing the polling stations on that meeting. With that, we've come to the end of the meeting. Thank you for your patience.